Hi everyone, for my new subscribers, I am Sneha. I'm a freelance makeup artist based in London. And for my returning subscribers, welcome back. I know it's been a very long time. I think my last video was 1 year old, apart from shorts, but I am back from what has been probably the worst year of my life, one of the worst anyway. But let's talk about Lisa Eldridge's recent launch, which is her Holiday 2022 collection. This launch includes 5 eyeshadow palettes, which is for the first time. I'm so excited that Lisa Eldridge is launching eyeshadows finally. She did have liquid eyeshadows previously, which were the liquid Lurex eyeshadows, and I absolutely love the formula. They are hands down probably some of my favorite liquid eyeshadow formulas. In addition, she also launched 5 velvet lipsticks with matching lip liners. So let's start with the eyeshadow palettes. This is what the outer packaging looks like. Sorry, it's very bright, so I'm gonna hold it probably closer to me. So this is what the outer packaging looks like. Amazing. With the Lisa's monogram right there. And then on the back here you have the names of the shade and also the ingredients of each shade under it. But this information is already on her website, so if you'd like to have a better look at it, that's where you'll find it. So I went to the store on launch day, which was last Friday, and these are the 2 palettes that I picked up. So I have Myth and then I have Sorcery. This is what the packaging looks like. I'll just show you one at a time. Again, with the monogram embossed. Such a beautiful, chic, elegant packaging. Absolutely gorgeous. Definitely a collector's item. And on the back here, you do have the notches to pop out the single eyeshadows, and you can buy either to refill the palette, or if you want to make a custom palette of your own, you can get single eyeshadows, if that makes sense. And those retail for £11 each. So it's slightly cheaper to buy the palette compared to buying 6 of the individual eyeshadows, because that would bring up the price to £66 compared to £49, where you also get the outer packaging here. So on the back here, you have the name of the palette. So that's Myth right here. And then you get the names of the eyeshadows. And under each, you can also see what kind of formula it is. So Lisa did launch with 6 different formulas of eyeshadows. And I really wanted to try as many formulas as possible, which is why I ended up with 2 palettes. Initially, I was just going to pick up Sorcery, which is amazing color story. But then because Sorcery has mostly metallics and did not have all the other finishes, I ended up also buying Myth, which created such a beautiful look. I played with it yesterday and I'll show you later when we get onto the demo of the palette. Now in the store, they did not have Vega palette to view or for purchase, just because there was a delay in shipment. So I'm not sure if at the moment it is available or not in the store, but I definitely see it available online. The other 2 color stories, well, the palette Muse, looked a little meh for my skin tone. I think it'll look amazing on fair to light skin tones or anybody with blue eye color. The other palette, Cinnabar, I was considering getting that, but when I look at the color story, it's not unique. So I feel like I have those kind of shades in several of my palettes, which is why I ended up with Myth and Sorcery. So this is what Myth looks like, and it has a beautiful purple color story. It looks great against olive skin tones or anybody with brown eyes, so this was definitely a no-brainer for me. And this is what Sorcery looks like against my skin tone. Again, beautiful jewel tones, so a lot of green and blue tones in here. But we'll get to more details in a little bit. So I picked up the 2 palettes and also 2 of the new lipsticks. I picked up Sorcery, which is this shade, and then Enchantment. The one I have on my lips right now is actually Enchantment, just lightly dabbed, and then I have a little bit of the Affair lip gloss Embrace just on the center of my lip, just because my lips were feeling a little dry. Not from the lipstick, but just because I didn't put on a lip balm this morning. So this is what the 2 lipsticks look like. I will get into swatches in a little bit. And last but not the least, in store, and I think also available online, is a gift with purchase. So if you buy 3 or more products, you get the new velvet pouch in the shade Pompadour. This is worth about £18. So coming back to the eyeshadow palettes, each of the eyeshadow palettes has like a curated color story by Lisa, and it's inspired by the palettes that Lisa created in her makeup kit. So I'm imagining these shades arranged by colors, like a palette for purple or multiple palettes for purple, some for green, and so on and so forth. And this is like an edited version of those palettes. And I can definitely see that from the colors in here. There's something for every skin tone as well, which I truly appreciate. So you can literally create something really simple. Say, for example, if I use the example of Myth, you can literally have any of these shades just all over the eyelid, just a standalone color, and call it a day. Just apply mascara, maybe apply an eyeliner if you want to and literally call it a day, or you can go full on, as I'll show you later in the video, where I've done a demo using all 6 shades for one look. Also, these eyeshadows are talc free and also free from microplastics. So the palette is magnetic. I don't know if you can hear the sound when I close this. Hopefully you can. Hopefully the microphone picked that up. And then, as I mentioned before, these notches are great for popping out the eyeshadow and popping the new ones in. You do get a small sized mirror in here, if you can see that. And that's good enough to see your eyes. You can see both your eyes at one glance. So there's a lot of thought put behind the packaging and the whole design of these eyeshadows, including the shades. This is inspired by the Seamless foundation as well, which also has this beautiful notch on the packaging. Also, it's such a tiny palette. It fits in nicely. And I have really small hands, so if it fits into my palms, I think it can fit into anybody's hands. Now, the weight of each pan in here is 0.9 grams. So let's talk about the palette Myth. I'm going to read off from Lisa's website how she describes these colors. So this palette is inspired by the Mauve Decade and the Victorian Gothic hues. It includes shades from Lavender Grey, which is this one right here, Smoked Amethyst, which is this one, and then also a True Purple. And then you have a deeper one right there as well. So if you have olive or warm olive undertones, this palette will be amazing against your skin tone, because red violet is exactly opposite on the color wheel to yellow green. So these really stand out, and especially if you have brown eyes, purple looks beautiful on the eyes. So let's have a closer look at the palette. So this palette contains 4 velvet mattes, which is the cream to powder kind of a texture, 1 metallic eyeshadow, which is this one right here, and then 1 top coat, which is the shade right here. Next, I'm going to share the Swatches of Myth palette. So Nocturama is a velvet formula. It's a deep blackened violet, absolutely stunning. I think I've been missing this kind of a rich violet in my collection. The second shade is Illusionism, which is a top coat. It has a transparent base with ultraviolet sparkly pearls. Next shade is Mauve Decade, which is a velvet formula. It's a muted grey lavender. I was skeptical if the shade would show up on my skin tone, but it absolutely does. Next we have Faded Amethyst, which is a metallic formula. Smoke and Lustrous Taupey Amethyst is the description. Next is Victorian Trim, which is again a velvet formula. Rich and Brown Vibrant Mulberry, which is more of red-violet color. And then lastly, we have Violet Stone, which is again a velvet formula. It's a pure violet shade. And this is how the swatches look in natural daylight. Let's now move on to the demo portion, where I'm going to create a look using all 6 shades of the Myth eyeshadow palette. So I'm first priming my eyelids with the NARS Eye Primer. And then I'm using the shade Mauve Decade and using this as a transition shade. So applying it into my crease and taking it up towards my brow bone. Gradually building up the color. Then I'm going into the shade Victorian Trim and applying it to the crease. So this shade adds a little bit of warmth to this look compared to the other shades, which are more cool toned. Applying it into the crease and also along my bottom lash line. Then going into the shade Violet Stone. And I'm using this to deepen up the outer corner, so applying it in the outer V almost and taking it to the outer portions of the crease and also along the outer portion of the bottom lash line. Then I'm using Faded Amethyst, which is a metallic, and I'm applying it on the eyelid. Anyway, we haven't applied eyeshadow yet. Also taking a little bit along the bottom lash line, just the inner portion. Then for my inner corner highlight, I'm using the shade Illusionism. And lastly, going into Nocturama, I'm going to create like a wing with the eyeshadow, if that makes sense, with this brush just on the outer V of my eye. So that's like a blended one. And then just applying it along my top lash line as an eyeliner. I'm also going to run whatever's remaining on my brush along the bottom lash line, just very close to my lashes, and then blending away the edges. I'm lining my top waterline with a black eye pencil and finishing the look with some mascara. And this is the eye look up close. My base is Lisa Eldridge's foundation of Make Shade 17 and 18. The blush I'm wearing is the Enlivening Blush. It's in the shade Dante's Dream. I also have on the Elevated Glow in the shade Solar Light. And on my lips I have Velvet Sorcery just lightly dabbed on my lips. And this is what the makeup looks like in natural daylight. Now I absolutely love the shades and the texture in the Myth palette. I love that we got so many mattes in this particular palette. I love a matte formula, if you know me well, because those are the shades that help in grounding a particular look, at least in my opinion. It's literally the perfect pocket-sized purple palette out there, so if there's any purple lovers out there, I would definitely recommend picking up this palette. Now, of course, you don't have to go crazy and use all 6 eyeshadows for creating a look like I did. But for me, it was more about showing you how each shade looks on my skin tone. And if you wanted to use the whole palette, you can create this look. But for example, you can create a simple look just by using this maybe in the crease. You can use this on the eyelid, maybe a little bit of that in the inner corner, or maybe this on the lid and this in the crease, and call it a day. You can maybe pop in just any of these matte eyeshadows just all over the lid and into the socket, and that'll be the look. And you can always use the topper just in the center to catch a little bit of the light. So there's endless ways you can create looks with this palette, and I absolutely love it. Now I will be creating more looks over on my Instagram, so if you don't follow me, please consider that. My Instagram handle is @beautylashes19, same as my YouTube channel username. At the time of filming, which is Monday, this palette Myth is still available on the website for purchase. And if you were just looking at individual eyeshadows, 3 out of the 6 are still available. So the 3 mattes are available. So it's this darkened plum one, the purple one, and I believe the raspberry mulberry shade. These 3 are still available for purchase. These 3 have been sold out. Moving on to Sorcery. This is honestly the first palette that caught my eye when I saw Lisa's video when she was talking about the collection before the launch. If you know me, I love color, especially jewel tones. So this was a no-brainer for me. I had to get it. Now I'll just read off the description for this palette from Lisa's website. Now, Sorcery is the story of magicians, fairs, and fantasy of the Middle Ages. This palette does what it says on the tin. It's just magic. Let's have a closer look at this palette and the different finishes. So if you look at the palette, you get 4 metallic finishes. These 4 right here, the quad. You get 1 of the seamless matte finish. This is absolutely gorgeous, this color and the finish. And then lastly, you have the luminous finish, which is a duochrome. So let's have a closer look at the palette. Moving on to the Swatches of Sorcery palette. The first shade is Troubadour. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correct. It's a seamless matte formula and it's described as a deep inky teal. Absolutely love this color. Next is the shade Grotto, which is a metallic formula. It's described as a rich emerald green. Next is another favorite shade of this palette, which is Madrigal, and it's a metallic finish. It's described as a blackened antique green gold. Next we have Mercurial, which is a luminous finish. It's a prismatic green to heather duochrome. Next we have the shade Mage, which is a metallic finish. It's a pale silver sage green gray with icy blue, pink, gold, and green pearls. For me, it looks like more of a greenish silver, if that makes sense. And lastly, we have Swan Song, which is a metallic finish, which is described as a rich sapphire blue. And this is how the swatches appear in daylight. Let's move on to creating this look with the palette Sorcery. And again, I have used all 6 shades just to show you how you can use all 6 to create a look. And also how you can see how these shades look against my skin tone. I'm first priming my eyelids with the NARS Eye Primer. And then I'm going in with the seamless matte shade Troubadour and applying that on the outer V of my eye and also taking it into the crease of my eye and blending it out with the soft brush. Also taking the shade along the outer corner of the bottom lash line. Then moving on to the shade Grotto, which is a metallic, and applying it to the center of my eyelid. And again blending the edges. Then I'm going in with the shade Madrigal, which is a metallic finish, and I'm applying it on the inner 1/3 of my eye. Next, using Mercurial, which is the luminous duo, and applying it to the inner corner of my eye. I'm also going to pat a little bit on top of the shade Grotto, which is the center of my eye. Next, I'm taking the shade Swan Song, which is the metallic shade, applying it along my lower lash line and blending that out, and also taking it on the top portion of the eyelid, just on the outer corner. And then using a little bit of the shade Mage, which is the metallic shade, applying it towards the front of my bottom lash line. And lastly, going back to that stunning matte green Troubadour and applying it as an eyeliner just close to my top lash line. Finishing off this look with a matte green pencil on the top waterline and a matte blue eye pencil on the bottom waterline. And then after mascara, this is what the eye looks like. I have the same base and blush and highlight as my previous look. So all Lisa Eldridge products. And on my lip, I have a little bit of Enchantment lipstick, just lightly dabbed as a stain. And also a little bit of the Lip Embrace gloss in the shade Affair. And this is what the makeup looks like in natural daylight. I love this palette, especially this matte green teal color. It is stunning. This is what I have on the outer corner right here and also in my crease. If you saw from the demo, it blends out seamlessly, but at the same time it's easy to build up the color, which I absolutely love in terms of depth. That is fantastic. This shade is absolutely stunning. It just has the most beautiful reflex that's on the inner 1/3 of my eyelid. This one is again a stunner. I know I used it only in the inner corner and a little bit on top of the shade, but I'm going to create more looks on Instagram and I'm sure to use that all over the lid. Can't wait to do that. This is not so much my favorite just because I don't lean towards more silver toned eyeshadows in general. And then this one's a nice metallic blue but doesn't have as much reflection or reflex as the other shades such as Madrigal or that one. Unfortunately, this is also one of the first palettes to be sold out on Lisa's website, and also most of the singles are also sold out, I believe. So 4 out of the 6 eyeshadows are sold out. The only ones remaining are the first matte, which is that stunning green. I absolutely recommend getting that one. It is beautiful. And the other shade that's remaining is this blue one. So if you're considering picking up any of those, it's still available on her website. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, definitely give it a like and also consider subscribing for more such videos. Now let's talk about the lipsticks from this launch. If you follow me on social media, you already know that I absolutely love the velvet lipstick formulas. Not just how much pigment they have, which is important for my pigmented lips, but also how they feel on the lips. They are matte but not drying on the lips, and they stay put for a very long time on the lips, pretty much all day sometimes. So these have surely become one of my top bullet lipstick formulas, if not the number one formula. So when Lisa was launching 5 new shades, I had to go check them out, and I ended up buying 2 of them. So we have Sorcery and Enchantment. Now each of these retail for £26 here in the UK. I was also considering the shade Duchess initially, but when I saw the swatches against Velvet Jazz on a deeper skin tone, which is what I go off of for my pigmented lips, they were very similar. So that's why, since I already own Jazz, I did not get the shade Duchess. The first shade is Enchantment. Such a beautiful shade. It's such a unique red color. It's red but yet muted, if that makes sense. So there's nothing like this in my collection and I absolutely love it. Now I can apply these as a stain, just like I have on my lips at the moment. And then later when we get to swatches, I'll show you this in full opacity. The second one is Sorcery. This is another stunning shade. It has the perfect mix of mauve and brown in it, which makes it look great on all skin tones. Again, this can be worn lightly blotted, as you saw with look number 1, where I paired it with the palette Myth. Or later in this video, I'm going to show you this lipstick at full opacity. Now, if you have Meet Me in Berlin, which is one of her luxuriously lucent lipsticks, this is very similar to that, but because the formulas are different, this one definitely gives more payoff in terms of color, and this is slightly more mauvey, whereas Meet Me in Berlin is more brown, if that makes sense. But very similar in terms of the depth you get. Now, let's look at the swatches for these. So I've again shown you both light swatch and a heavy swatch with these lipsticks. So starting with the shade Velvet Enchantment, first applying it lightly like a stain, and applying it at full opacity. Then moving on to Velvet Sorcery, first applying it as a stain and then applying it at full opacity. And now I'm just going to swatch some other shades that I think were kind of similar from Lisa Eldridge's existing line. So the first one is Meet Me in Berlin, which is the Luxuriously Lucent formula. Next we have Spirited Away, which is also a Luxuriously Lucent formula. Then we have Velvet Affair, followed by Velvet Muse, and lastly Velvet Blush. And this is how the swatches look in daylight. And then moving on to the lip swatches. So here's Sorcery, applied lightly on the lips. And here it is with full opacity. Then we have Enchantment, which is applied like a stain here. And then here at full opacity. Overall, I'm just very thrilled with the holiday launch by Lisa Eldridge. Lisa and her team have put so much thought into creating each of these products, especially the eyeshadow palettes, which is new on the market, and it definitely reflects on the collection as a whole. So you can go for something very subtle or wearable such as Muse or even Cinnabar for that matter, even Vega, or you can go for something more colorful like Myth and Sorcery. I would just recommend picking up a color story that actually speaks to you personally, and you won't go wrong. If I could, I would have all of them. So here's a few other videos that I think will be helpful for you guys. I'm going to link them right here. But thank you so much for watching, and I really hope this video was helpful. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!